Manzanar, one of the many Japanese internment camps created to hold Japanese Americans after the attack on Pearl Harbor. Approximately 120,000 Japanese Americans were relocated to these internment camps because of fear of espionage. But before we talk about the internment, we must first start with Commodore Perry and the Treaty of Kanagawa in 1854. Because of Commodore Perry sailing to Tokyo Bay, the U.S. became the first Western nation to establish relations with Japan since 1683. The Treaty of Kanagawa was signed on March 31, 1854, and opened trade between Japan and the U.S., while also allowing the placement of a U.S. consulate in Japan.
The first immigrants from Japan began to arrive in Hawaii to work on the sugar plantations, and some eventually made their way to California due to U.S. annexation of Hawaii. As time went on, Japanese Americans were much like any typical American in the U.S. They lived out normal lives like going to school, work, and hanging out with friends. However, their lives were changed forever on December 7, 1941, when the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor.
From the NBC newsroom in New York, President Roosevelt said in a statement today that the Japanese have attacked Pearl Harbor, Hawaii, from the air. I'll repeat that. President Roosevelt says that the Japanese have attacked Pearl Harbor in Hawaii from the air.
We will interrupt all programs to give you latest news bulletins. Stay tuned to this station.
On February 19, 1942, Franklin D. Roosevelt signed Executive Order 9066 authorizing the relocation of Japanese American families into internment camps across the West Coast. Many of these people did not have enough time to sell all their belongings, so they had to leave them behind.
The living conditions within the internment camps were bad in the sense that there was no privacy because it was so crowded, the housing was small, and the food was bland. For part of our research, we went to the Japanese American Museum in Little Tokyo, where we were able to get a first-hand look at a real-life barrack that was taken from the Heart Mountain internment camp.
The person we have chosen to interview is our group member Ryan Higashi's dad, Edward Higashi. Our interview is more of the story of Ryan's grandfather's experience within his internment camp being told by Ryan's dad, and per Mr. Higashi's request, we have only included audio from our interview with him.
My father, Mutsuo Higashi, was born on March 23, 1922 in Long Beach, California. My father recalls a few days after the Pearl Harbor attack, he was in the kitchen cooking breakfast when there was a knock on the front door. He said when he opened the front door, 2 FBI agents wanted to know where his dad was. When he told the FBI agents that his dad was working in a farm, my father later saw the FBI agents place his dad into their car and drive away. He then said the next day a few more FBI agents came for his mom, his brothers, and himself. On the day they were taken, my father said they were transported to the Santa Anita racetracks in Arcadia, California. When they arrived, he said the family then stayed in makeshift house stables for the next 6 months. My father said one of the saddest days he remembers before being sent to camp was the day the FBI came to take them away. He remembers crying in the car and seeing his home, the family's farm, and their dog for the last time while driving away.
This social injustice did not go unnoticed because of people who fought for their civil liberties like Fred Korematsu. Fred Korematsu was a Japanese American who tried to avoid internment. He was eventually arrested and convicted for violating an executive order. Fred took his case to the Supreme Court, stating that he was being discriminated based on his race. The Supreme Court eventually voted in favor of the government, stating that the country's protection was more important than an individual's rights. His conviction would later be overturned in 1983.
In 1944, Franklin D. Roosevelt revoked Executive Order 9066 and began to close down the internment camps. The last camp was shut down in 1945.
However, when those interned went back to their old homes, most found that they had been vandalized, ransacked, or even tagged with racial slurs. They would face many hardships when it came to seeking employment because of the discrimination towards the Japanese.
In 1988, President Ronald Reagan signed the 1988 Civil Liberties Act, which served as the U.S. government's official apology to the Japanese Americans placed in internment camps. These previous internment camp residents were also rewarded with $20,000 in compensation.